The morning sky over Earth changed forever when the first shadow appeared. It started as a small dark spot above New York City, growing larger until it blocked out the sun. People stopped on the streets and pointed upward. Cars slowed down. Everyone was looking at the same thing. Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his apartment when his neighbor started screaming. He ran to the window and saw it. A massive ship hung in the air above the city. It was bigger than any building, dark gray and covered with strange lights. More ships appeared over other cities around the world. Lisa Chen was working late at the NASA office when all the computers started beeping at once. The screens showed radar signals unlike anything they had ever seen. Ships were appearing over every major city on Earth, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, all at the same time. "This is not possible," Lisa said to her team. "Nothing moves that fast through space." But the ships were real, and they were not from Earth. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship looking down at the blue planet below. He had done this many times before. 43 worlds had fallen to the Zephyrian Empire. The pattern was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force. Demand surrender. Take the strongest beings as slaves for the mining colonies. Leave the rest to serve the Empire. Begin the standard protocol, Veltar told his officers. This species appears primitive. They should surrender within 3 rotations. The Zephyrians had studied Earth for months. They saw creatures that walked on 2 legs, used simple machines, and fought small wars among themselves. Perfect for slave labor. Their technology was thousands of years behind Zephyrian science. This would be easy. The first message came through every television, radio, and computer on Earth at the same time. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect English and every other human language. "People of Earth, we are the Zephyrian Empire. You are now under our control. Resistance is useless. You will surrender all weapons and report to collection. Points in your cities. Those who comply will be treated fairly. Those who resist will be destroyed." Jake Morrison turned off his television and walked to his closet. Inside was his old Marine uniform and his service rifle. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before coming home to New York. He thought his fighting days were over. "Guess not," he said to himself. In Washington, emergency meetings started immediately. The president called together military leaders from around the world. General Park looked at the satellite images and shook his head. "We count over 200 ships worldwide. Each one is the size of a small city. We have never seen technology like this." "What are our options?" the president asked. "Fight or surrender," General Park said. "Those appear to be the only choices." Lisa Chen was working with teams from every space agency on Earth. They were trying to understand how the alien ships worked. The ships did not use any kind of engine they recognized. They just floated in the air like they weighed nothing. "The energy readings are incredible," Lisa told the Emergency Science Committee. "Each ship has the power of a small sun, but we are seeing patterns in their technology. Maybe we can learn something useful." Around the world, people reacted in different ways. Some hid in their homes. Others gathered in churches and prayed. Many went to the collection points the aliens had demanded, hoping to avoid conflict. But not everyone was ready to give up. In Texas, ranch owner Bill Thompson gathered his neighbors. They had over 50 hunting rifles and thousands of rounds of ammunition. "Nobody tells me what to do on my own land," he said. In London, former soldier Mary Davis organized her apartment building. "We fought the Nazis. We can fight these things too." In Tokyo, Businessman Ken Nakamura convinced his employees to barricade their office building. "We will not be slaves to anyone." The Zephyrians expected some resistance. Every species fought a little before giving up, but they were surprised by how quickly the humans organized. Instead of panic, they saw preparation. Instead of chaos, they saw coordination. Commander Veltar received reports from his scouts. "Sir, many humans are not reporting to collection points. They appear to be forming resistance groups." "How many?" Veltar asked. "Approximately 60% of the population in major cities, even more in rural areas." Veltar was confused. On other worlds, resistance was maybe 5 or 10%. Usually just the military forces, but these humans seemed to think that ordinary people could fight a spacefaring empire. "Begin Phase 2, Veltar ordered. "Show them our power." The demonstration came at noon. A small Zephyrian fighter ship appeared over Central Park in New York. It fired a single beam of energy at an empty area. The beam cut a perfect circle 50 feet deep into the ground. Then the ship broadcast another message. "This is the power of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender now or your cities will be destroyed." Jake Morrison watched the demonstration from his apartment window. He saw the smoking hole in the park. He also saw something else. People were not running away in terror. They were gathering in groups, talking, planning. His phone rang. It was his old Marine buddy, Pete Williams. "Jake, you seeing this?" "Yeah. Impressive technology. I'm thinking the same thing you are, aren't I?" Jake smiled. "Probably. Marines don't surrender?" "Never have. Never will." "You still got your gear?" "Always ready, brother." Around the world, similar conversations were happening. Old soldiers calling friends, police officers organizing their stations, ordinary people deciding they would rather fight than live as slaves. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake. They thought overwhelming force would make humans surrender, but humans had a different reaction to overwhelming force. They got angry. In her NASA office, Lisa Chen was studying the energy beam from the alien demonstration. The beam was powerful, but it followed patterns. All technology followed patterns, and patterns could be understood. "If we can understand how they make energy," she told her team, "maybe we can learn how to stop it." Commander Veltar looked at the reports coming in from around the planet. The humans were not surrendering. They were organizing. Military units were moving into defensive positions. Civilian groups were building barricades. Even children were being trained to carry messages. "This is unusual," Veltar said to his second-in-command. "Most species collapse after the demonstration." "Perhaps they do not understand our superiority, Commander. Should we destroy a city to make our point clear?" Veltar considered this. Destroying. A city usually ended resistance quickly, but something about these humans made him hesitate. They did not seem afraid enough. They seemed determined. "Not yet," he decided. "Begin landing operations. We will take them by force if necessary." As night fell over Earth, both sides prepared for war. The humans knew they were facing impossible odds. The aliens had technology beyond human understanding. But humans had something the aliens did not expect. They had decided they would rather die free than live as slaves, and that decision was about to change everything. The first alien troops landed at dawn. Commander Veltar had chosen sites outside major cities for the initial assault, desert areas with few buildings, places where his soldiers could establish bases without destroying valuable infrastructure. The landing site in Nevada was supposed to be empty. According to Zephyrian scans, Only a few scattered humans lived in the area. It should have been a simple operation. Land, secure the area, and wait for human surrender. Jake Morrison had other plans. He arrived at the landing site 3 hours before the aliens. With him were 12 other Marines, all veterans who had answered his call. They brought whatever weapons they could find. Hunting rifles, shotguns, and a few military weapons they had kept from their service days. "Remember," Jake told his team as they watched the alien ship descend, "we are not trying to win this fight. We are trying to learn how they fight." The Zephyrian transport ship was enormous. It landed with a sound like thunder, crushing desert rocks under its weight. Steam rose from its hull as the ship cooled in Earth's atmosphere. A door opened in the side of the ship. Zephyrian soldiers marched out in perfect formation. They were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore armor that shimmered like metal but moved like cloth. Each soldier carried a weapon that looked like a crystal. Rod, the squad leader, Sub-Commander Crix, scanned the area with his equipment. The readings showed the presence of native life forms, but they seemed to be keeping their distance. Good. The locals understood Zephyrian superiority. Jake Morrison lay on his stomach behind a rock ridge, watching through binoculars. He counted. 60 alien soldiers. They moved with discipline but no urgency. They acted like they owned the place already. "Big mistake," Jake whispered to Pete Williams, who was lying next to him with a sniper rifle. The aliens began setting up some kind of equipment. Tall poles with crystal tops that hummed with energy. Jake guessed they were communication devices or sensors. Either way, they needed to go. "Light them up," Jake said into his radio. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Jake's Marines had positioned themselves on ridges around the landing site. Their first shots targeted the alien equipment, not the soldiers. Every crystal pole exploded in sparks and smoke. The Zephyrians were completely surprised. Their sensors had detected the humans, but they had dismissed them as harmless. No primitive species had ever attacked during a first landing. It was illogical. It was suicide. Sub-Commander Crix dove for cover as bullets whistled past his head. His soldiers were trained for conquest, not combat. Most species surrendered before any fighting started. They had no experience with ambush tactics. "Return fire!" Crix ordered. The Zephyrian weapons were devastating. Their crystal rods fired beams of pure energy that could cut through rock, but the humans were not standing still. They fired a few shots, then moved to new positions. By the time the aliens fired back, the humans were gone. Jake Morrison had learned guerrilla tactics fighting in Afghanistan. The enemy there had used similar methods against superior technology. Hit fast, move quickly, never stay in one place. Long enough to be targeted. "These things are dangerous," Pete Williams said as an energy beam melted the rock where he had been standing seconds before. "But they are slow." It was true. The alien weapons were powerful, but took time to aim and fire. Human weapons were less powerful but much faster. A human could fire 10 shots in the time it took an alien to fire 1. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, half the alien equipment was destroyed and 15 Zephyrian soldiers were dead. The humans had lost 3 Marines, but they had accomplished their mission. They had learned how the aliens fought. More importantly, they had sent a message. Humans would not surrender without a fight. In her NASA laboratory, Lisa Chen was studying pieces of a crashed alien scout ship. The ship had been shot down over Michigan by Air Force fighters. Most of it was destroyed, but some pieces survived. "The metal is unlike anything on Earth," she told her team, "but it follows the same laws. of physics we know. It can be damaged. It can be destroyed. This was crucial information. The alien technology was advanced, but it was not magic. It could be understood and defeated. Lisa focused on the alien communication equipment. The devices used a form of quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across vast distances. It was technology Earth would not develop for decades. But the principles were familiar. If we can understand their communication system, Lisa explained to the science committee, we can coordinate our defense globally. Right now, our biggest weakness is that we cannot communicate fast enough to respond to their attacks. Meanwhile, the aliens were having problems of their own. Commander Veltar stood in his command center, looking at reports from landing sites around the world. Every single operation had faced human resistance. The humans were not using advanced weapons, but they were using them effectively. How many casualties? Veltar asked his tactical officer. 47 dead, 93 wounded. The humans are using primitive kinetic weapons, but they aim for weak points in our armor. This was unprecedented. In 43 previous conquests, the Zephyrians had never lost more than 5 soldiers during initial landings. Usually they lost none. What about human casualties? Estimated at over 300, but they continue fighting despite heavy losses. Veltar did not understand this. Any rational species would stop fighting when they were clearly outmatched. These humans seemed to prefer death to surrender. Sir, another officer reported, we are receiving messages from human governments. They are demanding that we leave their planet immediately. Demanding? Veltar was incredulous. They are in no position to make demands, but the human messages kept coming. Every government on Earth had sent the same basic response. The aliens were not welcome. They should leave immediately or face continued resistance. Sub-Commander Crix was being treated for wounds in the medical bay. He had been grazed by a human bullet during the Nevada battle. As he lay on the treatment table, he thought about what he had experienced. The humans had fought with no hope of victory. They knew the Zephyrian weapons were superior. They knew they would probably die. But they fought anyway. Why? Sub-Commander, the medical officer said. You seem troubled. The humans, Crix replied. They fight differently than other species. They seem to value something more than their lives. Impossible. Self-preservation is the strongest instinct in all intelligent life. But Crix had seen it with his own eyes, humans throwing themselves into danger to help wounded comrades. Humans continuing to fight even when surrounded. Humans choosing death rather than surrender. Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. In London, a small group of humans had destroyed an alien communication post. In Tokyo, civilians with homemade weapons had forced aliens to retreat from a landing site. In Sydney, humans had actually captured alien equipment and were trying to learn how it worked. Jake Morrison was meeting with other resistance leaders in a hidden bunker outside Las Vegas. The group included former soldiers, police officers, hunters, and even some civilians with no military training. The aliens are good at fighting armies, Jake explained. But they do not know how to fight a whole population. Every person on Earth is a potential enemy to them. And the older woman named Amy Rodriguez spoke up. She had been a school teacher before the invasion. My students are helping, she said. Children can go places adults cannot. They can carry messages and watch for aliens. This gave Jake an idea. We need to think like teachers, not soldiers. We need to teach every person on Earth how to fight these things. Pete Williams had been working on captured alien equipment. "Their weapons are powerful but complicated," he reported. "I think I can build something that will interfere with their energy systems." "How long do you need?" Jake asked. "Give me a week, maybe 2. Lisa Chen had made a breakthrough. Working day and night, her team had cracked the basic principles of Zephyrian communication technology. They could not build their own quantum communicators, but they could disrupt alien signals. "We can jam their communications," she told the Emergency Military Committee. "If we can stop them from coordinating their attacks, we can fight them one group at a time." Commander Veltar was beginning to realize that Earth was different from previous conquests. The humans were not just resisting, they were adapting. Every day their tactics improved, their weapons became more effective, their attacks became more coordinated. "Perhaps we should demonstrate our full power," his tactical officer suggested. "Destroy a city. Show them the futility of resistance." Veltar considered this. Destroying a human city would certainly show their power, but it might also make the humans even more determined to fight. These creatures seemed to respond to threat with increased aggression rather than fear. "Not yet," he decided. "Continue landing operations, but increase security. These humans are more dangerous than they appear." As the second day of invasion ended, both sides were learning about each other. The aliens had superior technology and overwhelming firepower, but the humans had something the aliens had never encountered before. They had the determination to fight for something more important than their own lives. They were fighting for freedom, and that made them far more dangerous than any weapon. The detention center in Chicago was built to hold 10,000 humans. The Zephyrians had rounded up civilians from the city and brought them here to await transport to the mining colonies. It should have been simple. Keep the humans contained until the slave ships arrived. But nothing about Earth was simple. Amy Rodriguez sat in the corner of the detention hall, surrounded by her former students. Even in captivity, she was still teaching. But now her lessons were about survival and resistance. "Remember what we practiced," she whispered to 12-year-old Bobby Chan. "Count the guards. Notice when they change shifts. Find the weak spots." The alien guards walked through the detention center in groups of 3. They carried their energy weapons but seemed bored. Most species became passive once captured. They accepted their fate and waited quietly for transport. The humans were different. "Mrs. Rodriguez," 8-year-old Sally Kim whispered, "I saw something. The guards do not watch the air vents during mealtime. They are too busy managing the food distribution." Amy smiled. Her students were the best intelligence network the Resistance could have. Children could move through small spaces adults could not reach. They could observe without being noticed, and the aliens seemed to dismiss them as harmless. "Very good, Sally. What else did you notice?" "The energy barriers around the doors go down for exactly 30 seconds during shift changes. I counted. This information was precious." Amy had been a teacher for 15 years before the invasion. She knew how to organize people and get them to work together. Now she was organizing the largest prison break in human history. Outside the detention center, Jake Morrison and his team were planning a rescue operation, but they were getting help from an unexpected source: the prisoners themselves. Through a series of coded messages passed by children, Amy Rodriguez had been communicating with the Resistance. She had provided detailed information about guard, patterns, security systems, and the layout of the facility. "The teacher is amazing," Pete Williams said as he studied the intelligence reports. She has organized 15,000 prisoners into a coordinated resistance cell. Jake nodded. Teachers know how to manage large groups. Maybe we should have put them in charge of the military from the beginning. But the prison break was just part of a larger pattern. Across the globe, captured humans were refusing to cooperate with their captors. They would not work in the alien facilities. They would not provide information about human defense systems. They would not even eat the food the aliens provided. Commander Veltar was receiving disturbing reports from detention centers around the world. The humans are engaging in mass hunger strikes, his logistics officer reported. Production at the temporary facilities has stopped completely. Force them to work, Veltar ordered. We have tried, sir. They prefer death to cooperation. We have lost over 2,000 potential slaves to starvation and suicide. This was incomprehensible to Veltar. Every other species valued survival above all else. The Zephyrians had conquered the galaxy by exploiting this universal truth. But humans seemed to value abstract concepts more than their own lives. What do they want? Veltar asked. Freedom, sir. They keep saying they want freedom. Veltar did not understand the concept. In Zephyrian society, individuals existed to serve the Empire. Personal desires were irrelevant. Efficiency and order were the highest values. But these humans spoke of freedom as if it were more important than life itself. Meanwhile, Lisa Chen had achieved a major breakthrough. Working with captured alien technology, her team had successfully reverse-engineered the basic principles of Zephyrian communication systems. They could not build their own quantum communicators, but they could tap into the alien network. We can hear everything they say, to each other, Lisa explained to the Global Defense Committee. Their communications are encrypted, but the encryption follows mathematical patterns we can break. This gave the resistance a huge advantage. For the first time since the invasion began, humans could coordinate their actions on a global scale. Lisa's communication network allowed resistance groups in different countries to share information and plan joint operations. The first coordinated global strike came on the 5th day of the invasion. At exactly noon, resistance groups in 50 cities around the world attacked alien facilities simultaneously. The attacks were small but perfectly timed. While aliens in one location dealt with an attack, they could not send help to other locations, under assault. Jake Morrison led the assault on the Chicago Detention Center. As Amy Rodriguez had promised, the energy barriers went down for 30 seconds during the shift change. That was all the time Jake's team needed. The Marines burst through the facility's main entrance while the barriers were down. Inside, 15,000 prisoners were ready. Amy Rodriguez had organized them into groups with specific tasks. Some would help evacuate children and elderly people. Others would fight alongside the Marines. Mrs. Rodriguez, I presume, Jake said when he found Amy directing the evacuation. Jake Morrison, your reputation precedes you. My students have been watching your operations. Your students are the best intelligence network I have ever seen. Amy smiled. Children are natural spies. Adults forget they exist. The breakout was successful, but it came at a cost. Many humans died in the fighting. The aliens had powerful weapons and used them without mercy, but the humans had something the aliens did not expect. They fought for each other. Jake Morrison watched a teenage boy throw himself in front of an alien energy beam to protect a wounded elderly man. He saw a mother shield 3 children with her own body. He saw strangers risk their lives to help people they had never met before. Sub-Commander Crix was leading the alien response to the Chicago breakout. He watched the human behavior with growing confusion. These beings made no logical sense. They sacrificed their lives for individuals who contributed nothing to their survival. "Why do they do this?" Crix asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. Their behavior patterns do not match any known intelligent species." Crix had been studying human behavior since the invasion began. The more he observed, the less he understood. Humans seemed to care more about helping each other than about their own safety. They formed emotional bonds that overrode logical decision-making. During the Detroit landing, Crix had seen a human soldier carry a wounded comrade for miles while under enemy fire. The wounded soldier was clearly going to die. Carrying him served no practical purpose, but the human refused to leave him behind. "We do not abandon our people," the human had said when Crix asked him why. This concept was foreign to Zephyrian thinking. In their society, individuals who could not contribute were left behind. It was logical and efficient, but these humans seemed to believe that every individual life had value regardless of its utility. Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. In London, a group of captured humans had organized a work stoppage that shut down an entire alien supply depot. In Tokyo, prisoners had sabotaged their transport ship, choosing to die in the crash rather than become slaves. But the most disturbing reports came from the mining facility in Australia. The aliens had forced captured humans to work in their temporary mining operation. But the humans had found ways to sabotage the equipment while appearing to cooperate. "They are incredibly creative in their resistance," the facility commander reported. "They use tools incorrectly, causing equipment failures. They work slowly and make mistakes that appear accidental but follow suspicious patterns. Productivity is down by 70%. Commander Veltar was beginning to understand that this invasion was unlike any previous operation. The humans were not just resisting military conquest. They were resisting the entire concept of slavery. Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest adult, seemed to understand that freedom was more valuable than life. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we are receiving a message from the human resistance. They claim to represent all of Earth. Put it through." The message was simple and direct. A human female appeared on the screen. She looked directly into the camera and spoke with complete confidence. "To the Zephyrian Empire. This is Lisa Chen, speaking for the people of Earth. We have a message for you. We will never surrender. We will never submit. We will never stop fighting. You can kill us, but you cannot enslave us. We suggest you leave our planet now, while you still can." The transmission ended. Commander Veltar stared at the blank screen. The human female had not threatened him with superior weapons or advanced technology. She had simply stated that humans would choose death over slavery. For the first time in his long career, Veltar felt something he did not recognize. Later, he would learn that humans called it doubt. Amy Rodriguez was back at work, this time in a hidden bunker outside Chicago. Her network of young spies had grown to include thousands of children across the city. They carried messages, gathered intelligence, and helped coordinate resistance activities. "The aliens are having trouble understanding us," she told her volunteer teachers. "They think in terms of logic and efficiency. They do not understand that we fight for love." "Love?" asked one of the teachers. "Love of family, love of friends, love of freedom, love of our planet. The aliens fight for conquest and resources. We fight for everything that—" Sub-Commander Crix was trapped under tons of concrete and steel. The human bombing of the Detroit Command Center had brought down half the building. His legs were pinned, and his communication device was broken. He was going to die in this human city, far from the Zephyrian homeworld. The footsteps approaching through the rubble were human. Crix reached for his weapon, but his arm was also trapped. He was helpless. According to everything he knew about warfare, the humans would either kill him or capture him for interrogation. Jake Morrison appeared in the gap between two fallen concrete slabs. He was dirty and bleeding from several wounds. He had been fighting Zephyrian forces for 6 hours straight. When he saw the trapped alien, he stopped and stared. "Well," Jake said, "this is interesting." Crix waited for death, but Jake did something unexpected. He began moving pieces of debris trying to free the trapped alien. "Why?" Crix asked in his broken English. "Because you are hurt," Jake replied, as if this explained everything. It took Jake 20 minutes to free Crix from the rubble. During that time, the building continued to collapse around them. Jake could have left at any time. Instead, he risked his own life to save his enemy. "I do not understand," Crix said when he was finally free. "Welcome to being human," Jake replied. "Half the time, we do not understand ourselves." This was Crix's first real conversation with a human. For the past week, he had only seen them as enemies to be defeated. But sitting in the ruins of the Detroit Command Center talking with Jake Morrison, he began to see them as something else, people. "Your species confuses us," Crix admitted. "You fight without hope of victory. You sacrifice yourselves for others. You refuse to surrender even when death is certain." Jake bandaged a wound on Crix's arm, using his own medical supplies. "We fight because it is right. We sacrifice for others because we love them. We refuse to surrender because freedom is more important than life. But freedom is an abstract concept. It provides no practical benefit." Jake laughed. "Kid, you have a lot to learn about being alive." Over the next hour, as they waited for rescue, Jake explained human concepts that Crix had never encountered. Family bonds that lasted a lifetime. Friendships based on choice rather than utility. The idea that every individual had inherent value regardless of their ability to contribute to society. "On your world," Jake asked, "do you have friends?" Crix had to think about this. "We have colleagues, individuals we work with efficiently. But do you have someone you would risk your life for, just because you care about them?" The concept was foreign to Crix. In Zephyrian society, individuals were valued only for their function. Personal relationships were discouraged as inefficient distractions. "No," Crix said. "That would be illogical." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but it makes life worth living." When rescue teams found them, both human and Zephyrian, there was confusion about what to do. The humans wanted to arrest Crix as a prisoner of war. The Zephyrians wanted to extract him for medical treatment. Jake made the decision. "He comes with us. He is under my protection." This caused a diplomatic crisis that reached the highest levels of both sides. Commander Veltar was furious that one of his officers was being held by humans. But Crix sent a message through Lisa Chen's communication network saying he was staying voluntarily. "I want to understand these beings," Crix explained in his report to Veltar. "Their behavior patterns may contain information useful to the Empire." This was not entirely true. Crix was staying because, for the first time in his life, he felt something the humans called friendship. Jake Morrison had risked his life to save an enemy. The concept was so alien to Zephyrian thinking that Crix needed to study it firsthand. Amy, Rodriguez was the first human to interview Crix extensively. As a teacher, she knew how to ask questions that revealed deeper truths. She met with Crix in a secure facility outside Chicago, with Jake Morrison serving as a translator for complex concepts. "Tell me about your childhood," Amy asked. Crix looked confused. "Childhood is the period of development before an individual becomes productive. There is nothing significant to discuss. Did you play games? Have friends? Dream about what you wanted to be when you grew up?" Each question revealed how different the two species were. Zephyrian children were raised in communal facilities focused entirely on education and training. They learned skills and facts, but not emotions or creativity. They were taught to serve the Empire, not to think for themselves. "Did anyone love you?" Amy asked gently. Crix did not understand the word love in this context. Amy spent an hour explaining the concept: love between parents and children, love between friends, love between romantic partners, the idea that beings could care about each other simply because they chose to, not because it served any practical purpose. "This emotion called love," Crix said slowly, "it drives much of human behavior." "Most of it," Amy confirmed. "We fight because we love our families. We sacrifice because we love our friends. We resist slavery because we love freedom." For Crix, this was a revelation. The Zephyrian Empire had spent months analyzing human military capabilities, technology, and resources. But they had completely missed the emotional foundation that drove human behavior. "Your leaders do not understand," Crix said. "They think humans are just another species to be conquered. But you are something new, something dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Jake asked. "You have ideas that could spread. Other species might learn to value freedom more than security. They might choose resistance over submission. The Empire depends on the assumption that rational beings will always choose survival over abstract principles." Lisa Chen joined the conversations with Crix. As a scientist, she was fascinated by the differences between human and Zephyrian thinking. But she was also looking for tactical advantages. "Your people have emotions," she observed. "But they have been trained to suppress them." "Emotions are inefficient," Crix replied. "They interfere with logical decision-making. But they also provide motivation for extraordinary actions. Humans accomplish impossible things when driven by love, anger, or hope." Crix was beginning to understand this. He had seen human soldiers fight with impossible courage when defending their families. He had seen civilians risk their lives to save strangers. He had seen children as young as 10 years old organize resistance networks with the dedication of trained spies. "My people have forgotten what we are fighting for," Crix admitted. "We conquer because we have always conquered. We expand because expansion is our purpose. But humans fight for something they believe in." Meanwhile, other Zephyrian soldiers were having similar realizations. Exposure to human prisoners was causing unexpected reactions among younger Zephyrians. They began asking questions about the purpose of conquest. They started forming emotional attachments to individual humans. Lieutenant Zara, a Zephyrian medical officer, was treating human prisoners in the detention facility in Sydney. She was supposed to keep them healthy enough for slave labor. But working with human children was changing her perspective. "This one has a broken arm," she reported about a 10-year-old human girl named Emma. "Repair it efficiently and return her to the general population," her supervisor ordered. But Zara found herself spending extra time with Emma, talking with her, trying to understand human family structures. Emma spoke constantly about her parents, who had been separated from her during the roundup. "Why do you care so much about your parents?" Zara asked. "Because they love me, and I love them," Emma replied, as if this explained everything. Zara had never experienced parental love. Zephyrian children were raised by the state for maximum efficiency. The concept of parents caring for children out of emotional attachment was foreign to her. "But love serves no practical function," Zara said. Emma looked at her with pity. "That is the saddest thing I have ever heard." Over the following days, Zara found herself thinking about Emma's words. She began observing human family interactions more closely. She saw parents comforting frightened children. She saw siblings protecting each other. She saw elderly humans sharing food with younger ones even when resources were scarce. None of it made logical sense, but all of it seemed to make the humans stronger. Commander Veltar was receiving reports about problems with his younger officers. Many were requesting transfers away from human contact. Others were asking philosophical questions about the purpose of the Empire. Some were even expressing doubt about the morality of slavery. "The humans are infectious," his psychological officer reported. "Extended contact with them is causing ideological contamination among our forces." This was an unprecedented problem. In 43 previous conquests, contact with alien species had never affected Zephyrian personnel. But humans seemed to carry ideas that spread like a virus. "Limit contact between our forces and human prisoners," Veltar ordered. "Use automated systems for detention management." But it was too late. The ideas had already begun to spread. Young Zephyrians who had never questioned the Empire were starting to ask why conquest was necessary. Officers who had followed orders without thought were beginning to consider the morality of their actions. Crix was at the center of this change. His regular communications with other Zephyrian units included subtle questions about the value of individual life and the meaning of freedom. He was not trying to start a Pete Williams had been working in his garage for 2 weeks straight. The captured Zephyrian technology was unlike anything he had ever seen, but the basic principles were starting to make sense. Energy flowed through crystal matrices in patterns that could be disrupted with the right frequency. "I think I have got it," he announced to Jake Morrison and Lisa Chen, who had come to see his latest invention. On the workbench was a device that looked like a cross between a car battery and a radio antenna. Pete had built it using parts from broken alien equipment, car parts, and electronic components salvaged from a destroyed shopping mall. "What does it do?" Jake asked. "It creates an electromagnetic pulse tuned specifically to Zephyrian energy frequencies. It should shut down their weapons and shields within a 100-meter radius." Lisa examined the device carefully. Her understanding of alien technology had improved dramatically over the past weeks. "The theory is sound, but will it work in combat?" "Only one way to find out," Pete replied. The test came sooner than expected. A Zephyrian patrol was approaching their hidden base outside Las Vegas. 6 alien soldiers with full combat equipment. Under normal circumstances, Jake's team would have avoided contact, but with Pete's new weapon, they had a chance to turn the tables. "Remember," Jake told his team as they prepared for the ambush, "we get one shot at this. If Pete's gadget does not work, we are in serious trouble." The Zephyrian patrol was led by Lieutenant Vex, a young officer who had been questioning his orders more frequently since the start of the Earth campaign. He had heard about Sub-Commander Crix's defection and the strange ideas spreading among younger Zephyrians. As his patrol approached the human base, Vex noticed something unusual. The humans were not running or hiding. They were waiting in formation as if preparing for a fair fight. "This does not match human behavior patterns," Vex told his squad. "They usually use hit-and-run tactics." "Perhaps they have finally accepted the futility of resistance," suggested one of his soldiers. But Vex had learned not to underestimate humans. "Stay alert. These beings are unpredictable." The battle began when Pete activated his electromagnetic pulse device. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every piece of Zephyrian equipment within range simply stopped working. Weapons went dead. Armor lost its protective fields. Communication devices fell silent. "What happened?" Lieutenant Vex shouted as his squad stood helpless with useless equipment. "Welcome to human ingenuity," Jake Morrison replied as he and his team emerged from cover with conventional weapons ready. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had technological superiority in a direct confrontation. But instead of executing the helpless aliens, Jake ordered his team to take them prisoner. "Why do you not kill us?" Lieutenant Vex asked as he was led away. "Because we are not murderers," Jake replied. "We fight for freedom, not revenge." This distinction was important to the humans, but confusing to the Zephyrians. Most species in the galaxy considered defeated enemies to be either slaves or corpses. The concept of treating prisoners humanely was another alien idea. Meanwhile, Amy Rodriguez's intelligence network had grown beyond anything the aliens could comprehend. Children throughout the occupied territories were gathering information, carrying messages, and coordinating resistance activities. The aliens had dismissed them as harmless, which made them the perfect spies. Mrs. Rodriguez, 10-year-old Carlos Martinez, reported, "The aliens are building something big in the factory district. My sister works in the building next door, and she says the machines run all night." Amy studied the information her young agents had gathered. The aliens were constructing some kind of large device. Based on the descriptions, it looked like a communication array powerful enough to contact their homeworld. "If they complete that device," Lisa Chen said when Amy shared the intelligence, "they could call for reinforcements. We need to stop them." The attack on the alien construction site became the largest coordinated human operation since the invasion began. Lisa Chen's communication network allowed resistance groups from 3 states to participate simultaneously. Pete Williams had built enough electromagnetic pulse devices to equip 50 teams. Jake Morrison led the main assault force, but the operation involved hundreds of participants. Former soldiers, police officers, hunters, factory workers, teachers, and even teenagers with homemade weapons. It was not an army in any traditional sense. It was an entire population in revolt. The attack came at dawn on the 15th day of the invasion. 50 teams struck simultaneously at alien positions around the world. The electromagnetic pulse devices worked perfectly, shutting down alien equipment and leaving their forces vulnerable to conventional weapons. But the most important target was the communication array in Detroit. If the aliens completed it, they could summon their main fleet from the outer solar system. Subcommander Crix was with Jake's team as they approached the facility. His knowledge of Zephyrian technology was crucial to the mission, but his presence also served another purpose. He was living proof that aliens could change their minds about humans. "The primary power coupling is in the central building," Crix explained as they studied the target. "If you can destroy that, the entire array will be useless." "How do we get past the guards?" Jake asked. "I can get you inside," Crix replied. "They will not expect me to be working with humans." The infiltration was successful. Crix walked up to the main gate as if returning from patrol. The guards recognized him and opened the barriers without question. Jake and his team followed, disguised as prisoners. Inside the facility, they found something unexpected. Half the Zephyrian workforce was sabotaging their own equipment. Young aliens were deliberately making mistakes, damaging components, and slowing construction. "What is happening here?" Jake asked Crix. "Revolution," Crix replied with something that might have been a smile. "Ideas are contagious. The concept of choosing your own path is spreading among my people." Lieutenant Zara, the medical officer, who had been working with human children, was among the saboteurs. She had organized a network of young Zephyrians who questioned the morality of conquest. "We cannot continue this war," she told Crix when she saw him. "These humans have shown us what we have lost. We have forgotten how to live for ourselves instead of the Empire." The destruction of the communication array was accomplished from within. Zephyrian rebels disabled the security systems while human forces dealt with loyalist troops. The massive device was reduced to scrap metal in less than an hour. But the real victory was not the destroyed equipment. It was the sight of humans and Zephyrians working together for a common cause. Commander Veltar received reports of the disaster from his flagship in orbit. The communication array was destroyed. Half his ground forces were in revolt. The human resistance was growing stronger every day. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we are losing this war." For the first time in Zephyrian history, a superior force was being defeated by primitives. But Veltar was beginning to understand that humans were not primitive. They were something else entirely. "The humans fight for principles," Veltar said to his senior staff. "We fight for conquest. They have something to gain from victory. We only have something to lose." "Sir, freedom is a powerful motivator. It gives them strength we do not possess." Reports were coming in from around the galaxy. Other Zephyrian campaigns were experiencing similar problems. News of the human resistance was spreading to conquered worlds. Species that had been enslaved for generations were beginning to rebel. "The humans are inspiring others," Veltar's intelligence officer reported. "Rebellion is spreading throughout the Empire. Our control is weakening on 17 worlds." This was Veltar's worst fear. The human concept of freedom was infectious. If it continued to spread, it could destroy the Empire completely. Amy Rodriguez was meeting with resistance leaders in a secure bunker when the news came through Lisa Chen's communication network. Zephyrian forces around the world were retreating to their ships. Some units were defecting entirely, led by young officers who had adopted human values. "We are winning," she told the gathering of fighters and civilians. "But victory comes with responsibility. We must show the aliens who join us that humans can be trusted." Jake Morrison was thinking the same thing. His friendship with Crix had taught him that Zephyrians were not evil. They were just individuals trapped in a system that valued conformity over choice. "Some of them want to change," he told his team. "We should help them learn how to be free." Pete Williams had been analyzing captured alien technology and making new discoveries every day. Their equipment is incredibly advanced, but it is designed for control, not creativity. Everything is standardized, regulated, restricted, just like their society, Lisa Chen observed. They have sacrificed innovation for efficiency. This was the key to human victory. Zephyrian technology was superior in every measurable way, but human creativity was allowing them to use alien equipment in ways its designers never intended. They were improvising solutions to problems the aliens had never considered. As the third week of invasion began, the balance of power was shifting. Humans had learned to disrupt alien technology. Zephyrian forces were experiencing internal rebellion. Most importantly, the aliens were... The hospital in the ruins of Denver was not really a hospital anymore. It was a collection of tents, abandoned buildings, and underground shelters where human doctors tried to save lives with whatever supplies they could find. Jake Morrison lay on a stretcher in what used to be a parking garage, his left leg shattered by an alien energy weapon. "You need to stop getting shot," Dr. Sarah Walsh said as she examined his wounds. "We are running out of places to patch you up." Jake tried to smile, but the pain made it difficult. "I will try to be more careful." The injury had happened during the evacuation of Phoenix. A Zephyrian counterattack had caught the resistance by surprise, and Jake had stayed behind to help civilians escape. An energy beam had collapsed a building on top of him, crushing his leg and burning his side. "Will I walk again?" he asked. Dr. Walsh was honest. "Maybe, if we had proper equipment and medicine. But with what we have here," she shrugged, "we can save your life. That will have to be enough." Around the improvised hospital, similar scenes were playing out hundreds of times. The war was taking a terrible toll on humanity. Cities lay in ruins. Millions of people were dead or missing. Those who survived faced hunger, disease, and constant danger. But they kept fighting. Amy Rodriguez visited Jake while he recovered. Her network of young spies had taken casualties, too. 3 children had been killed carrying messages through combat zones. A dozen more were missing, probably captured. "Sometimes I wonder if we are asking too much of them," she said, sitting beside Jake's stretcher. "Children have always paid the price for adult wars," Jake replied. "At least this time they get to fight back." It was cold comfort. Amy thought about Bobby Chen, who had been captured during a reconnaissance mission. The 12-year-old boy was probably in an alien detention center, facing interrogation and worse. But she knew he would never reveal resistance secrets. Human children were proving to be as tough as adult soldiers. Pete Williams arrived with his latest invention, a prosthetic leg powered by captured alien technology. "It is not perfect," he told Jake, "but it should let you walk without crutches." The device looked like science fiction, with crystal circuits and metal joints that moved with fluid precision. Pete had been designing similar equipment for other wounded fighters. The Resistance was learning to rebuild their people with the same ingenuity they used to rebuild their weapons. "How many others need this kind of help?" Jake asked. "Too many," Pete replied sadly. "We have over 3,000 amputees just in this region. The alien weapons do not leave much behind when they hit. The casualty reports were devastating, but they told only part of the story. For every human killed or wounded, the aliens were suffering losses they had never experienced before. Zephyrian military hospitals were overwhelmed with soldiers suffering from what human doctors called post-traumatic stress disorder. Sub-Commander Crix visited one of these hospitals, trying to understand what was happening to his people. The patients were young Zephyrians who had been exposed to human resistance tactics. They were physically healthy but mentally broken. "I cannot sleep," one soldier told Crix. "I see the human child who died trying to protect her mother. She was so small, but she stood between us and would not move." Another soldier was catatonic, staring at nothing. "He watched a human father sacrifice himself for his family," the medical officer explained. "Our people are not prepared for this level of emotional warfare." Crix realized that humans were not just winning through technology and tactics. They were winning by being themselves. Their courage, their loyalty, their willingness to die for each other was breaking the minds of soldiers trained for conquest, but not for witnessing heroism. Commander Veltar was facing a crisis that went beyond military defeat. His own forces were suffering psychological casualties at an unprecedented rate. Young officers were requesting transfers away from Earth. Some were refusing orders entirely. The human resistance is causing ideological contamination throughout our ranks, his medical officer reported. Exposure to their value system is undermining military discipline. Can you treat it? Veltar asked. Treat what, sir? The ability to feel compassion. The capacity for moral reasoning. These are not diseases. They are traits that make life meaningful. Veltar stared at his medical officer in shock. The contamination had spread even to his senior staff. Meanwhile, the rebellion among younger Zephyrians was growing stronger. Lieutenant Zara had organized a network of alien defectors who were actively helping the human resistance. They provided intelligence about Zephyrian operations and sabotaged their own equipment. We cannot continue this war, Zara told a secret meeting of rebel officers. Every day we remain on this planet, more of our people learn what we have lost. They are teaching us how to live instead of merely existing. The meeting was discovered by loyalist forces. Zara and 12 other rebels were arrested and charged with treason. But their trial became a platform for spreading revolutionary ideas. I'm guilty of learning to value individual life over imperial order, Zara declared at her trial. I am guilty of choosing compassion over efficiency. I am guilty of believing that freedom is more important than conquest. Her words were broadcast throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Soldiers who had never questioned the Empire began asking why conquest was necessary. Officers who had followed orders without thought began considering the morality of slavery. The trial ended with Zara's execution, but her death only strengthened the rebellion. Young Zephyrians saw her as a martyr for the cause of freedom. Her final words became a rallying cry for change. We were born to serve the Empire, but we choose to serve something greater. We choose to serve life itself. Back on Earth, the human resistance was also facing difficult choices. Resources were running low. Medical supplies were almost gone. Food was scarce in many areas. The electromagnetic pulse devices that had given them an advantage were breaking down, and replacement parts were hard to find. Lisa Chen was working 18 hours a day trying to maintain the communication network that held the resistance together. The captured alien technology was incredibly complex, and keeping it running required constant attention. I am losing nodes faster than I can repair them, she told the resistance leadership. If the network fails, we lose our coordination advantage. Amy Rodriguez was dealing with a different kind of breakdown. The psychological stress of the war was affecting her young operatives. Children who had seen too much violence were starting to show signs of trauma. Maybe we should evacuate the kids, she suggested during a leadership meeting. Evacuate them. Where? Jake asked from his hospital bed. There is nowhere on Earth the aliens cannot reach. It was true. The war had become global, with combat zones on every continent. Children were not safe anywhere, so they might as well contribute to the fight for freedom. But the human spirit proved resilient in ways the aliens could not predict. Communities formed around shared hardship. Strangers became family. People discovered strength they never knew they possessed. In the ruins of Los Angeles, a group of survivors had created a functioning society based on cooperation and mutual aid. They shared food, medical care, and protection without regard for previous social status or wealth. We have lost our old world, said community leader Maria Santos. But maybe we can build a better one. Similar communities were forming around the globe. The war was destroying the old order, But it was also creating opportunities for new forms of human organization based on the values that made them fight in the first place. Commander Veltar received reports about these human communities. With growing concern, the aliens were not just facing military resistance. They were witnessing the birth of a new form of civilization based on principles that directly challenged everything the Empire represented. They are creating societies without hierarchy, his sociologist reported. Leadership is based on competence and consent rather than authority and force. Resources are distributed according to need rather than status. Is this sustainable? Veltar asked. Unknown, sir. No species in our database has ever attempted large-scale organization based on voluntary cooperation. Logic suggests it should collapse into chaos, but these humans seem to make it work. The cost of war was enormous for both sides. Humans were dying in vast numbers, but they were also discovering what they were truly capable of when fighting for their deepest values. Zephyrians were maintaining military superiority, but they were losing the ideological foundation that held their civilization. Together, Jake Morrison finally received his new prosthetic leg and took his first steps in 3 weeks. The device worked perfectly, powered by alien technology but guided by human determination. How does it feel? Pete Williams asked. Different, Jake replied, but functional, like everything else about this war. As he walked out of the hospital and back into the fight, Jake knew the war was far from over. The aliens still had superior numbers and technology, but something fundamental had changed. Humans were no longer just trying to survive. They were fighting to build something better, and that change was spreading beyond Earth, infecting the very empire that had come to enslave them. The final assault on the Zephyrian fleet began at dawn on the 30th day of the invasion. Jake Morrison stood on a hilltop outside San Francisco, watching rockets streak into the sky toward the alien mothership floating above the bay. His prosthetic leg hummed quietly as he shifted his weight, alien technology helping him stand despite his injuries. "This is it," he said to Pete Williams, who was monitoring the attack from a mobile command station. "Everything we have learned, everything we have built, it all comes down to this." Pete's electromagnetic pulse devices had been modified and amplified using captured alien power cores. Instead of affecting 100 meters, the new weapons could disable alien technology across entire city blocks. But they only had enough power for one massive coordinated strike. Lisa Chen's communication network was operating at maximum capacity, coordinating resistance forces on 6 continents. Every surviving fighter, every functioning weapon, every piece of stolen alien technology was being thrown into this final desperate gamble. "Global strike teams report ready," Lisa announced from her bunker beneath the ruins of Los Angeles. "All targets locked. Waiting for your signal, Jake." Above them, the Zephyrian fleet hung in Earth's atmosphere like dark clouds. 50 massive warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. Commander Veltar's flagship was the largest, a kilometer-long vessel that served as the command center for the entire invasion, but the fleet was not united anymore. Nearly a third of the ships were commanded by officers who sympathized with the rebellion led by the late Lieutenant Zara. They would not participate in the final bombardment that Veltar had ordered. Sub-Commander Crix was aboard one of those ships, the destroyer Imperial Purpose. He had convinced most of the crew to join the rebellion, but the ship's captain remained loyal to the Empire. "You are committing treason," Captain Drex told Crix as security forces surrounded him on the bridge. "I am choosing freedom over slavery," Crix replied. "That is what the humans taught me." The confrontation aboard the Imperial Purpose was happening on dozens of Zephyrian ships. Young officers were refusing orders. Enlisted soldiers were laying down their weapons. The rigid hierarchy that had held the Empire together for thousands of years was crumbling. On Earth, Amy Rodriguez was preparing for what might be her final mission. Her network of young spies had identified a weakness in the alien fleet's defenses. The ships were protected by energy shields, but the generators were located on the outer hulls where maintenance crews could access them. "I need volunteers for a suicide mission," she told a gathering of her former students. These children had already risked their lives dozens of times for the resistance. Now she was asking them to do something even more dangerous. Every hand went up. "We are not afraid," said Bobby Chen, who had escaped from alien detention and rejoined the resistance. "If we die fighting, we die free." The assault began with Pete Williams's electromagnetic pulse weapons firing simultaneously around the globe. The massive energy discharge created aurora-like displays in the sky as alien shields flickered and failed. For the first time in the war, human weapons had successfully penetrated Zephyrian defenses. Jake Morrison led a team of fighters using captured alien aircraft to reach the mothership. The plan was desperate and probably suicidal, but it was their only chance to end the war before the aliens could regroup. "Remember," Jake told his team as they approached the massive vessel, "we are not trying to destroy the ship. We are trying to capture it. There are rebels aboard who will help us." The infiltration was successful because the aliens were fighting themselves. Loyalist forces were battling rebel crews throughout the fleet. Security systems were down. Chain of command had collapsed. Jake's team found Crix in the detention center where he was being held for treason. "I knew you would come," Crix said as Jake freed him from his cell. "Could not leave a friend behind," Jake replied. Together, they fought their way to the bridge of the Imperial Purpose. The ship's captain was dead, killed by his own crew when he tried to fire on human population centers. Crix assumed command and immediately turned the ship's weapons against other Loyalist vessels. Similar scenes were playing out across the fleet. Ship after ship was switching sides as rebel crews took control. The Zephyrian Empire was experiencing civil war in the middle of an invasion. Commander Veltar watched his fleet tear itself apart from the bridge of his flagship. Half his ships were in open rebellion. The others were either destroyed or damaged beyond repair. His invasion force was collapsing from within. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "human forces are boarding multiple vessels. Our security teams cannot contain them." "How is this possible?" Veltar demanded. "They are primitives with inferior technology." "They are fighting alongside our own people, sir. The rebellion has spread throughout the fleet." For the first time in his long career, Veltar felt something humans would recognize as despair. He had come to Earth with overwhelming superiority, expecting easy victory. Instead, he had found an enemy that refused to be defeated, and ideas that were destroying his civilization from within. Amy Rodriguez and her young operatives were conducting their own mission aboard a Zephyrian supply ship. Their job was to disable the vessel's power core, preventing it from supporting the Loyalist forces. The children moved through the ship's ventilation system like ghosts, invisible to alien sensors. "Remember," Amy whispered to her team, "these aliens are not our enemies anymore. Many of them want the same thing we want: freedom." They encountered a group of young Zephyrian workers who were trying to sabotage their own ship. Instead of fighting, the two groups worked together. Human creativity combined with alien technical knowledge proved unstoppable. "Why do you help us?" one of the alien workers asked Amy through a translation device. Because freedom is not just for humans, she replied. Everyone deserves the right to choose their own path. The battle for the fleet continued for 6 hours. By the end, over 30 Zephyrian ships had either joined the rebellion or been destroyed. The remaining loyalist forces were trapped and overwhelmed. Jake Morrison found himself on the bridge of Commander Veltar's flagship, face to face with the alien leader who had come to enslave humanity. But instead of hatred, Jake felt something unexpected: pity. Your empire is finished, Jake told Veltar. Your own people have learned what freedom means. They will not go back to slavery. Veltar looked around his bridge. His officers were either dead, captured, or had joined the rebellion. His mighty fleet was in ruins. His 1,000-year-old empire was crumbling. What do you want from me? Veltar asked. Surrender, Jake replied. End this war. Let your people choose their own future. It was a choice Veltar had never expected to face. In all his years of conquest, enemies had either submitted or been destroyed. No one had ever offered him mercy. And if I surrender, he asked, then we help you build something better. Humans and Zephyrians working together. Free beings, making free choices. The concept was so alien to Veltar's thinking that he struggled to comprehend it. But around him he could see evidence that it worked. Human and Zephyrian rebels were cooperating seamlessly, united by shared values rather than common species. Lisa. Chen's voice came through the communication system, reaching every ship in the fleet. To all Zephyrian forces, this is the human resistance. We offer you a choice. Join us in freedom or continue fighting for slavery. But know that your own people have already chosen. The old empire is dead. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The rebellion was spreading beyond Earth. Conquered worlds were rising up, inspired by human example. The Zephyrian Empire was facing revolution on dozens of planets simultaneously. Sir, a communication officer reported to Veltar. We are receiving messages from the homeworld. The High Council is demanding immediate withdrawal. The rebellion has reached the core systems. Veltar realized that even if he won the battle for Earth, he had already lost the war for his civilization. The ideas these humans represented were more powerful than any weapon. I surrender, he said quietly. The words were broadcast throughout the fleet. Fighting stopped immediately as the remaining loyalist forces laid down their weapons. The 30-day war for Earth was over. But something much larger was just beginning. The fall of the Zephyrian Empire would reshape the galaxy. And it had all. Started with humans who refused to accept slavery. Jake Morrison looked out at the fleet of ships that had come to conquer Earth. Many were damaged or destroyed. Others were now commanded by rebels who had learned the value of freedom. It was not the victory anyone had expected, but it was something better. It was the beginning of a new age. An age where beings chose their own destiny rather than accepting the fate imposed by others. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Commander Veltar stood in the observation deck of his flagship, looking down at Earth for the last time. The blue planet that had been meant to provide slaves for the Empire had instead become the birthplace of a revolution that was destroying everything he had ever known. 3 months had passed since the surrender. The Zephyrian fleet was preparing to leave Earth's solar system, but they were not the same beings who had arrived. Half the crew were now rebels who had embraced human concepts of freedom and individual choice. The other half were confused soldiers trying to understand what had happened to their ordered universe. The final transport ships are ready for departure, Sub-Commander Crix reported. Crix had been promoted to serve as liaison between human and Zephyrian forces during the transition period. How many are staying? Veltar asked. Approximately 15,000. They have requested asylum on Earth or passage to the free worlds that have declared independence from the Empire. 15,000 Zephyrians choosing exile rather than returning to their homeworld. It was unprecedented in the long history of the Empire. But then, everything about this campaign had been unprecedented. Jake Morrison arrived at the observation deck, walking easily on his prosthetic leg. Over the past months, he had worked closely with Veltar to coordinate the withdrawal and prevent unnecessary bloodshed. Their relationship had evolved from enemies to something approaching mutual respect. The United Nations has confirmed that any Zephyrian who wants to stay on Earth will be granted refugee status, Jake told Veltar. We have learned a lot from each other during this war. That learning should continue. Veltar nodded. Your species has taught mine things we had forgotten. Compassion, creativity, the value of individual life. These lessons come at a high price. The price had indeed been enormous. Earth's cities lay in ruins. Millions of humans were dead. The planet would take decades to recover from the devastation. But something new was being built from the wreckage. Human and Zephyrian engineers were working together to design cities based on cooperation rather than hierarchy. Amy Rodriguez had been appointed as Earth's first ambassador to refugee populations. Her experience organizing resistance networks made her perfect for helping displaced Zephyrians adapt to life in a free society. The children adapt fastest, she told Jake during one of their regular meetings. Young Zephyrians who grow up on Earth will be completely different from their parents. They will know freedom as their natural state. In schools around the world, human and Zephyrian children were learning together. The alien children struggled with concepts like choosing their own activities or expressing personal opinions. But they were learning, guided by human teachers who understood that education was about more than just transferring information. Pete Williams had established a joint technology program, combining human creativity with Zephyrian knowledge. The results were remarkable. Medical devices that could regrow lost limbs, communication systems that allowed instant contact across the galaxy, clean energy sources that could power entire cities without environmental damage. The funny thing, Pete told Jake, is that their technology was always capable of these things, but their culture never encouraged the kind of thinking that leads to innovation. They were so focused on control that they forgot about improvement. Lisa Chen had been working with Zephyrian scientists to establish a new communication network that would connect free worlds across the galaxy. The project was called the Liberty Network, and it would allow information and ideas to flow freely between planets. Knowledge wants to be free, Lisa explained to a gathering of human and alien researchers. When information can travel freely, oppression becomes impossible. Truth has a way of spreading despite attempts to contain it. The reports coming from across the galaxy confirmed this. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing as world after world declared independence. The homeworld itself was experiencing civil war as younger generations embraced the revolutionary ideas that had started on Earth. The High Council has been dissolved, Crix told the departure meeting. The homeworld is now governed by a council elected by popular vote. It is the first time in our history that ordinary citizens have chosen their leaders. This transformation had not been peaceful. Conservative factions within Zephyrian society were fighting desperately to preserve the old order. But the young rebels had learned human tactics. They used guerrilla warfare, civil disobedience, and mass organization to overcome superior force. Revolution is contagious, Veltar observed. Once beings taste freedom, they cannot accept slavery again. The departure ceremony took place in what had once been Central Park in New York. Representatives from around the world gathered to bid farewell to the Zephyrians who were leaving. It was a strange occasion, saying goodbye to beings who had come as conquerors but were leaving as friends. 6 months ago we were enemies, Jake said in his speech to the assembled crowd. Today, we are allies in the cause of freedom. This war taught us that the universe is big enough for many different kinds of people as long as they all choose to be free. Veltar spoke last. His words were broadcast across the galaxy, reaching worlds that were still fighting for their independence. I came to this planet as a representative of an empire built on conquest and slavery. I believed that superior technology and organization made us the rightful rulers of other species. I was wrong. He